Hello everyone, and welcome to Linux Forensics here at Pentester Academy. In this video, we're going to continue our discussion of extended file systems in Linux, and we're going to look at compatible features. Compatible features are those features that if your system doesn't support them, you can still mount a file system as read-write and everything will be okay. Now, if you run the fs check utility against this file system, you probably shouldn't make any changes to it or use that to repair it, but it is okay to actually use it. So a natural question you might ask yourself is, why do we care about features? I thought we were talking about forensics. So what do these features have to do with me? Well, here's what they have to do with you. They affect the structure of the block groups. We talked about the block groups in a previous video. And that in turn can affect where your data is located. So we want to know where we can find the data that we're looking for, and knowing a little bit more about these features helps us do that. It also affects the way that data is stored. What's stored in an inode versus somewhere else, etc. And some of these features might supply some additional metadata that would be useful for us in our analysis. So let's look at the set of compatible features. So the first one is a directory pre-allocation feature. So what does that mean? Well, it means kind of what it sounds like. If you have a directory, it will pre-allocate a certain amount of space whenever you create a directory. So not having that feature in your operating system shouldn't affect how the file system is used. iMagick inodes. I have a big question mark for this one because it doesn't look like people use this feature, and honestly, I'm not exactly sure what it does. A feature that we do use quite a bit is the has a journal feature. So do you have a journal for your file system? And we'll talk more about journals in future videos. For now, realize that X3 and X4 file systems will have a journal. That's what differentiates them in a big way from X2 file systems. Does it support extended attribute? If so, that flag will be set. The resize inode flag. This feature allows you to reserve space in the group descriptor table to allow for future expansion of the file system. There's the dir index feature. Do your directories have indices? There's the lazy block group feature. So what is that all about? If you look in the Windows world, sometimes you have the option to do a quick format. This is similar where when you make a file system, you can get away with not initializing all of the block groups. So if you have this feature enabled, then you can have non-zeroed block groups. It's not very common, but you could have it. There's an exclude inode and exclude bitmap feature, also not very common. And then there is a sparse super2 feature. In the super block, there is a field, there's actually two of them, it's an array that points to block groups that have backups of the super block. So what are the features in this group that affect layout? The resize inode will affect the layout of your disk. It does this because of the extra space for expansion in the group descriptor table. So it will make that larger. And the sparse super2 feature will also affect the layout of your disk because the backup super blocks are not in every group. They are just in the first group, group 0, and then the two groups that are listed. So how do you get this compatible feature information? If you're looking at a file system, you can get this information by using the stat command and also by using the files command. So if you do a stat on a file, it will give you a bunch of information. So for example, I will stat I'll just say stat star.txt, and it gives me some information on various text files that I have, such as their size, blocks, IO block, what kind of a file they are, what inodes are being used, etc. Also timestamps. So that's one way I can get information. I can also stat a file system. So I can do a stat, stat-f for, I want to do this on a file system, please, on my root directory, on that file system. And that will tell me about this file system and what type it is, what the block sizes are, and how many total blocks and free blocks I have, etc. I can also do a file command with the -s, capital L options on dev sd star on my various partitions. And of course it complained to me because I didn't do this as root. So let me fix that. I'll sudo that. And now it gives me a little bit more information. And it says here is my ext4 file system. And it has these features: needs journal recovery, extents, large files, and huge files. So we will talk in some future videos about what these different features mean. Now, when it comes to a disk image, how do we do these things? Well, there is a utility in the sleuth kit that's called fsstat. So if I run fsstat on my file system, I have to give it an offset. We showed you how to do that in some previous videos, to go and point at a file system, not the entire disk. And recall that our file system started at sector 2048, and I will point it at disk images 2015-39 IMG. And here it's going to output a whole bunch of information. We looked at some of this information before. And what I did is I captured this to a file, and that file is here. So if we look at compatible features, we see that my file system from our subject system has a journal, it has extended attributes, resizable inodes. In other words, it's got space saved in the block groups in order to resize the system, and directory indexes. So it has a few features, and in the future videos we will go over some of these other features. Also, real quickly, I wanted to point out, where can you get all this information on how these structures are set up? The best place, go to user, source, Linux, whatever, -headers, and you will find under fs for file system, and then a subdirectory called ext4, you will find this file, ext4.h, and in it you will find all of the structures. So I can look at superblocks, etc. Well, that's all for this video. As always, if you're enjoying these videos here at Pen Tester Academy, tell a friend and help us spread the word. We'll see you soon.